All right. Welcome and thank you for attending today's technical assistance webinar. The webinar is presented by Amity Foundation, acting as the third-party administrator for LA County's Justice, Care, and Opportunities Department and the CFCI CARE grants. The CFCI, or Care First Community Investment grants, are the result of ballot measure J, voted in by LA County residents in 2020. Care First Community Investment Funds are intended to be invested directly into communities and alternatives to incarceration that address negative outcomes caused by racially driven criminal legal system inequities and long-term economic disinvestment. Today's webinar is being recorded. You do not have to be on camera. Understand that if you are on camera, your image may be captured in the recording. Staying on the webinar constitutes your agreement to being recorded. Please note the following legal disclaimer. The material presented does not constitute legal advice and is only intended to provide information. Organizations and individuals should independently verify that any information presented is appropriate or applicable to their situation before acting on it. Next slide, please.
I'd like to introduce you to today's presenters. My name is Suzanne Dave. I am the Grant Project Assistant for Amity's third-party administrator, and I'm going to pass it on to Mina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mina Carrion. I am the Training and Technical Assistance Coordinator here at Amity. I will pass it on to Rebecca.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rebecca Gray. I'm the Grant Administrator for Amity's TPA. And the star of our show today is Bradley. So Bradley, would you introduce yourself? Oh, might be having some technical difficulty.
There we go. Hi, I'm Bradley Gusick, Senior Accountant over in the Tucson, Arizona office, and working with TPA projects mostly.
Thank you so much. All right, so back to you, Suzanne.
At Amity, we incorporate teachings that center this community before we begin our work. Today, we will use the LA County's land acknowledgement to recognize the price paid by individuals that has resulted in efforts such as Care First Community Investment. We recognize that we occupy land originally and are still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Kiss, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in genocide of the first peoples. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. Next slide.
Okay, so want to start off with just a quick agenda here. Want to talk about budgets. We want to talk about the purpose of budgets, the importance of comparing those budgets to actuals, as well as how you make changes to your budget if you need to. I'm sure all of you have already been familiar with the process, but this is to get some clarification and to address some questions that I've also been receiving as we've been going through all these processes. Next slide, please. So first, we want to talk about what is the purpose of the budget. The budgets are a planning tool. They exist to plan for the future. They are not a spending limit. So the idea here is we kind of use budgets to the same word to mean two different things in our lives. So when we're talking about budgets for this purpose, it's going, what do I expect? So that you can then, go on and make choices that are along what you expect. But what you expect might not actually happen. This would be different than the way we talk about budgets, I think, in a lot of our normal lives where you say, well, I'm going out to eat. I have a budget of $30, meaning you're not going to spend more than that. So I've been seeing some, this will go back to the budget to actuals, which is what we'll talk about next, but where people are going, I can't go over X, whatever your budget is, and that's not the case. However, disclaimer, the funding received is going to remain the same regardless of, how much of your budget you used. So if you go over budget, sometimes that's going to happen. That's sometimes something you're going to need to do. You have an unexpected cost, things have changed, in the next year, maybe utilities went up, those sorts of things. But the funding received, the actual cash payments is going to stay the same no matter if you go over for that. So that's the big thing, is budgets are there to help you chart your path to the future, through the future for your project. It's not a hard cap on things. And then that's where we want to get into how that compares to actuals, your budgets to actuals. And next slide, please. So reporting your actual costs to your budget amount helps you track your project. So you have a plan, and then as you're reporting your actual costs, you're going to be able to compare where you are, what you've been doing to what your plan was. If you're spot on, great. You did a really good job planning. If you're over or under, it's good to have, question why, well, maybe prices went up on, materials from when you made the budget compared to now. Utilities go up, wages go up, all of these things happen from year to year, and you don't necessarily know exactly what's going to happen. So that helps you compare where you are in that project and where you expected to be when you made your budget. Now, I want to point out something that's important here, is because I've been asked, if you don't have enough, if you haven't spent your full budget, can you roll that budget over the next year? And that goes back to, it's not a spending limit, and we can't roll over the budget. So if you have extra spending there that, you underspent one year, you might overspend in the next year. So these are being tracked on a yearly basis and across that full project basis. So if we're looking at tracking the budget, it's going to be for a full 3-year period. You might underspend here, be right on target for year 2, and overspend on year 3. So since we're also tracking on that full project basis, you're effectively rolling it over, even though we can't actually move budgets from year to year. So recording your full spending is important, even if over budget. For example, you may overspend in year 1, well, and then underspend in year 2 and be on track at that point. But if you didn't record your overspending, it would look like you're underspent for the whole project. And then there's cases where at the end of the whole project, the county can, if that money wasn't spent, they can ask for it back. So you want to show that what you're spending. That will also help you go, okay, looking at my reports, I'm over budget here. What happened? How can I make sure that I'm not, spending money out of my own pocket at that point, to continue on with what your project is, to make sure that your funding meets what your project is. Sometimes changes are necessary, and we can get to that next, but I believe there's a chart here. So next slide, please. I'm sure you're all pretty familiar at this point, since a lot of people have already been turning these in. This is your budget expenditure form, dealing with, your position titles, what services, what the budget is, how much have you spent to date, what's your remaining balance. Pretty simple here, but we just like to, you know, give a reminder of what we're talking about when you're talking about our actuals to our budget. Next slide, please. That reminds me. So there is another portion of this expenditure that we want to talk about because there's going to be some checks because we're reviewing all of these actuals to budget. If things, you know, if it's way underspending, way overspending, we want to know why, what's going on so that we can be of assistance to your programs in order to help you and assist you in, you know, doing the good work that you're doing. So financial backup refers to documents that show proof of expenses. So this could be invoices and receipts. This might be payroll information. This might be time cards, all sorts of things. The work orders, any number of things that go, you spent X on this expense. We want to make sure that, you know, there's a proof, an invoice, receipt, something that shows that, yes, this money was spent. This is also something that the county could ask us to look into. You know, they want to see that and they want to see some backup. So the backup is not required to be submitted with the quarterly reporting, but you should make sure that you're keeping track of that. So time cards, keep your invoices, keep your receipts, work orders, any of that sorts of thing. Next slide, please. So there are reasons to revise your budget. And I think I've talked to some people looking in the chat. I've talked to some of you already. But so there's a lot of reasons you might want to revise your budget. You know, unforeseen costs have come up. You just go, man, I didn't even, when I was making the plan for this project, I didn't even think that there was going to be a cost, you know, not just it's more expensive, but there's just a whole category I didn't think of. So for example, this is something that I don't think people really took an account for, but for example, data collection for the reporting takes time. So whether you're sending in your milestones, you're sending in budget revisions, if you're sending in your budget to actuals, you're if we have questions and you need to produce invoices, all of these things take time. Someone has to do all of this. And that time and cost may not have been in that original budget. It might not be a huge amount, but it is something that, you know, you may not have thought about, that setting aside, you know, a few hours every quarter or month or, you know, whatever you need to do for putting together all your reporting that's required for the project and by the contract. Cost, material, labor might have changed since the budget was created. Since the budgets for all 3 years had to be the same as per, you know, the rules set out. You're going to be paying your employees more. Utilities are going to go up. You know, as we've all seen, costs of everything every year. You know, whether it's 2%, 3%, whatever it is, it just goes up a little bit. So you may have to, you know, shift some priorities around or, you know, move things from, you know, certain material portions to the other. The focus of work may have shifted since the budget was created. This isn't to say that the project has shifted, but maybe you were working in, you know, 3 different ways to help people or serve your community. And then you found out maybe the first of those, like 3 that maybe you thought you were going to work on evenly, that's been what's been really successful. So it might have just shifted and maybe you're working more on this portion of your project than the other portion. And that's fine. And reasons why you might want to actually revise your budget, once again, it's not a limit. So it's not like you need to go find the money here. If you're over by 2 or 3% on a piece, that's fine. But once again, since it's there to help you plan, And if that budget doesn't really look like how what your work is going through right now, then it's not very useful. Where you'd have to go, why am I way over budget here and way under budget here? And you have to remember every time, as opposed to going, no, we went here, we refocused, we revised our plan, and we're doing good. So that's some reasons to revise your budget. Once again, it's all there to serve you and help you plan your work for the future, and then see where you were and what adjustments you need to make. So it's a tool that's there to help and help make all of your lives easier when it comes to your work and your finances. Next slide, please. So how do you make changes to your budget? Well, if you need to, there is a form that is on the next page that can be submitted if a revision of the budget is needed. Probably the best person to talk to initially is talk to your grant advocate, and they can put you in touch with probably be me or someone with accounting that we can get these budget forms to you. Budget amounts can be moved from line to line, or you can create an entirely new line. For example, if you go, oh, I do need to set something aside for, say, that data collection, you can create that brand new line. The total amount for the year must stay the same. So if you've got an amount for the whole year, then you can't move from year to year. So if you need to create $500 new item line, that $500 needs to come from something else. So it needs to be removed and then added, moved around like that. So can't move from year to year, but it can be moved from line to line. If you want to take things from materials and put it into labor, that's fine. But they just have to, the year has to end up being the same. Next slide, please. So here is this budget revision form. You'll see where when these are being requested, we're trying to get this out and fill out what's your current budget, all filled out there. And those would be on those gray columns, original year 1, year 2, year 3. And then you'd be able to add lines, and then add up everything on the revised year budgets. And got a little tool there at the bottom where it'll have your budget total amount, get those zero differences down to 0, and you've got a brand new budget, send it in. It'll be reviewed and let you know whether or not it's approved or not, whether we have some questions, things like that. So pretty smooth process. Try to make it as easy as possible for y'all. And next slide, please. So that's kind of the end there for my presentation. If we have any questions in the chat, that'd be great. And we've got time to answer them here.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is Pamela Clay, Living Advantage. I was wondering, Bradley, do we just submit an email request to you to get the budget revision form?
So you probably you talk to your grant advocate is typically who would be sending the email, and then they'd be sending the emails over down to me. But yeah.
Okay, great, because we did that, and I think she referred us to you, so you wanted to come directly from Michaela.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's helpful. It also keeps them looped in and everything too.
I will let her know. I will let her know perfectly. So you pretty much answered, all of my questions. So thank you very much.
Problem.
Hi, this is Candy Lewis with Positive Results Center. Thank you for this presentation. Will you be sending this out to us?
So this should be posted up on, well, maybe Mina, you can say exactly.
Yeah, of course. So there is already one version of Budgets with Bradley's on our Amity website. But this specific one will be up in the next coming weeks. And your grant advocate will definitely give you more information on like the link and everything, as well as our May bulletin. But it will be sent out, yes.
Thank you.
Suzanne, are there any questions from the chat?
There are no questions in the chat at the moment. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat for us.
I have a question. I apologize. I was in a previous meeting that I had to attend. Can you go over very briefly, Bradley, the essential information regarding dates that I have to pay attention to as it relates to the budget?
Okay, so you're talking about dates for submitting, say, your budget to actuals or your budget expenditure forms?
Yes.
Okay, so I know milestones is within everything but that portion would be within 5 days by the 5th. So once we get that, then things they're submitted out. So generally, as quickly as you can. I would say if it's within 2 weeks of the start of the quarter or the end of the quarter, you'll be in great shape. Just simply because there's also just a time to get everything, all your milestones, everything issued for reporting for operations. And then from that point, then we can start moving on towards, say, payment for the quarter. But yeah, if it's within 2 weeks, then you're going to be in good shape.
Hi, this is Terry with High Point. I have a question about, you had mentioned during the training, if we find another priority, like for example, for us, we're finding that we've been having to focus a lot more on trying to work and partner with other agencies and having to do a lot more outreach in order to get those MOUs and start new relationships versus focusing on our cognitive behavioral therapy classes. So we wrote the grant to say we're going to do all of them and meet those requirements in all quarters. So in relation to the budget, how would that, we have to make a budget adjustment and talk to Amity about changing our milestones?
Well, yeah, so you'd want to do with the milestones. Yeah, so I can't speak to the milestones portions, unfortunately. What I would say is that would be something that if it's still within, your scope of work, but you're finding out that, one outreach, you're gonna, have outreach in maybe a couple different methods that maybe you're finding out one is getting to your target, people that you're working with better than something else maybe did. So that's what I meant.
Bradley, I
so
can step in here.
Oh, okay.
So, hi, everyone. This is Joanne. So in regards to your milestones, you do want to reach out to your grant advocate. Any questions on your milestones, we can take a look at them and see where we can make, or we need to make adjustments if needed. Again, based on your scope of work, we still have to stay within your scope of work. And then we can take a look at your budget and how maybe moving some of those things might affect your budget. And at that point, we would reach out to Bradley.
Okay, thanks.
Hope that helps.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
If there's any more questions, please drop those questions in the chat for us.
If you don't have questions now, there are some common questions and answers to be found on the on our webpage for TPA. And also you can email at tpagrants@amityfdn.org. And those questions will then go to the people who can get you your answers.
Well, if that's it, it doesn't look like we've got any other questions. Going to go on and close the webinar now. And again, if your question didn't get asked, if you think of it later, if something comes up, please feel free to email us at tpagrants@amityfdn.org. And before I close, anything else in the chat, Suzanne?
There is nothing else in the chat.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. Maybe we'll see you next Wednesday.
Can you please give the website again? TPA grants.
At amityfdn.org.
Could you also send this ticket information to her Gmail?
Can you, Mina, could you back up one slide where the address is posted so they can see it written down? There it is. Email us at tpagrants@amityfdn.org. Feel free to send any questions there.
I also just put the TPA website link in the chat. You guys can access the website there.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.